The Mummy was very popular as a film. It gave the world a new monster and educated everyone on the ways of ancient Egypt. Well, in a way. It proved to be a smash hit for Universal and made Carl Jr. very happy. And a movie that was so successful would surely have sequels, right? Well, yes and no. And by that, I mean no. In the years to follow, Universal Pictures would proceed to make 5 other Mummy movies, with none of them having anything to do with the Mummy. So technically, they're not sequels, they're just movies about a mummy, not the Mummy. And Karloff would seemingly want nothing to do with these movies, as he would never portray the Mummy again. Yep, the Mummy was a one-and-done deal for Karloff. And in these preceding Mummy movies, the Mummy would be portrayed by different actors. Yeah, Tom Tyler would portray the Mummy, and he's best known for playing Captain Marvel in the film serial The Adventures of Captain Marvel, or Shazam, depending on, what era you're from. And what does Universal Pictures do when they can't get Boris Karloff to return for a role? They get Lon Chaney Jr. to do it. Just like they did for the Ghost of Frankenstein, Lon Chaney Jr. would portray a role that Karloff was famous for. And portraying the Mummy is no exception, as Lon Chaney Jr. did so in 3 different Mummy movies. So the other 5 Universal Pictures Mummy movies have nothing to do with the original. But what they accomplished was help further establish the Mummy as a new monster. There was The Mummy's Hand, which was released in 1940. And then there's The Mummy's Tomb, which was released in 1942. And 1944 would see Universal Pictures release 2 Mummy movies. My oh my, aren't we prolific? Yep, there's The Mummy's Ghost. Wait, how can a mummy have a ghost? It's already dead. Does that mean it's double dead?
Double dead.
And The Mummy's Curse. Not to be confused with The Mummy's Purse, which was released in 1948. Nah, I'm just kidding about that. And finally, there's Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy, which was released in 1955. And this movie would not only be the final in the Abbott and Costello Meet the Monster series, but also the last Abbott and Costello movie that Universal would release, period. Now, all of these Mummy movies were released on VHS as part of the Universal Monsters Classics Collection. And to no one's surprise, this collection would be the only time these movies were released on VHS. These movies are more obscure, forgotten about. It's understandable that this collection would be the only time they were released on VHS. And again, why was a movie that is so well known as the original Mummy not released on VHS until 1991 as part of this collection? I just don't get it. It's not like The Mummy's The Mummy's Curse. And all of those other Mummy movies did well at the time of their release. They've just sort of been forgotten about as time rolled on. But The Mummy has stood the test of time and hasn't been forgotten about at all, which is why I find it boggling that it doesn't have more of a presence on VHS. It's understandable that these other Mummy movies would only have 1 VHS release, but not the original Mummy. Let's just move on. As we've just established, all of the other Mummy movies were released on VHS as part of the Universal Monsters Classics Collection, except Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy. In fact, none of the Abbott and Costello Meet the Monster movies were included in the Universal Monsters quote-unquote Classics Collection. And in my previous adventures about other movie monsters, I very verbosely expressed my opinion on this gross oversight. And I'll express it again. It's stupid that these movies were not included in a VHS collection about Universal Monsters, when these movies include Universal Monsters. I mean, these movies were some of the first examples of cinematic universe crossovers, which is something everybody goes so apeshit about now. These movies were also the first examples of horror comedies. Abbott and Costello were straight up money makers for Universal, not to mention how successful the Universal Monsters were. So why didn't... You know what? I'm just going to calm down. I just don't get it. What, these movies weren't good enough to go in the Universal Monsters Classics Collection? But Captive Wild Woman was? Oh well, it can't be helped now. Anyways, Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy was released on VHS in 1991 by MCA Universal Home Video, which, if you're keeping score here, that is the same home video distributor that released the Universal Monsters Classics Collection. Not to mention, that is the same year that collection was first released, only adding to my frustration as to why this movie was not not included. And it would be released on VHS again in the year 2000 by Universal Home Video in a sleeve that looks like a shitty dollar store tape. All of these movies are relatively easy to find today for rather cheap prices. Cheap and easy, like my ex-wife. Nah, I'm just kidding. She wasn't that cheap. Hey-oh! So Universal Pictures not only gave us a new brand of monster movies, but also a new brand of movie monster.
Whoa. Watch the full episode here, as well as other classic Cat Nanos VHS pirate ship adventures. And please hit subscribe.